come from a culture where white Tantra is an Eastern term. We imported it from the East to the West. It's obviously because I think we made a terrible mistake about 1600 years ago when we took sexuality out of spirituality and basically turned religion into an ascetic practice where you sort of look down on the body and your spirit was supposed to be separate from the body and higher than the body. And we all know that we're probably making up for that now. So we have to compensate for that now. And that's exactly what we in the West, with all the freedoms we have today, all of this is sort of rushing towards us. And we have to both regain knowledge we've lost, and we also have to reinvent, maybe even invent new technologies actually to be able to handle these things. So I would say sexuality and spirituality definitely belong together. I would even say there's no spirituality without sexuality to begin with. The ascetic spirituality means totally
embodied spirituality.
Yeah, embodied spirituality. It's exactly that. Yeah. And I would even say that religion really started some if you go back 10,000 years to the original nomadic tribe and look at what religion really was. It was a story being told of how you put the tribe on the move. And it was a story being told of how you contained sexuality, not suppressed it, contained it, and redirected it to use its enormous power. And this is what the elders with experience in the tribe would do. And especially older women who probably left the reproduction cycle were the most trusted of all.
The matriarchs.
Yeah, the matriarchs, because they would be sexual teachers for younger women.
Right.
And then the younger men would have to learn both from each other, from the older men, actually what it means to contain your sexuality and practice it. And when men dream today about the gangbang and dream about sharing the most intimate experience in their life, including sexual experience, with other men, this is what they dream about. They dream about the gang, they dream about getting together in that sense. It's nothing to do with homosexuality per se.
No.
Everything to do about the woman being at the center.
Right.
But sharing that experience with somebody instead of being lonely in it.
Yeah.
Either lonely in a monogamous relationship or totally lonely, being left with pornography, no sexual partners at all. Which is what a lot of young men are left with today, and that's a tragedy. So we need to bring these things back. And for me, spiritual practice is that the elders have been around for a generation or two. They know quite a few things and they can teach these things. They can even literally, for example, when you do dearmoring, that's usually often an older woman who does it on the younger woman, for example, because she knows the female body.
Right.
So she can liberate that body to really enjoy pleasure and enjoy sexuality. So all of these things need to be done. What you and I do, though, is that we do work in a mindfulness. And I must say, we're having this conversation here, August the 7th in 2019 in Copenhagen, because we were talking about having this conversation for a while. We wanted to record something when we were talking, because we have these endless conversations. We can't stop talking, right? So, but it was an article that was published in Volkskrant in Holland, which is the Guardian of Holland, so to speak. And it was a really nasty article, only based on stupid hearsay out there, but also I did call you when Me Too happened. Remember Me Too happened?
Yeah.
And I did call you, warn you, and said that knowing what we would probably lead to, and I was very critical of Me Too in Sweden, not critical of women being able to finally tell the truth.
No,
totally
should totally have that right.
But totally against the way it was organized. The lack of strategy meant that there would be a lot of innocent men who'd be accused of things they'd never done. And that would ultimately kill the credibility. And for all sake, a couple of years later in Sweden, Me Too is dead and over. It's basically just court cases now. Court cases of men who are accusing women of having been innocently accused by lynch mobs. And it doesn't look good for feminism at all. It's probably going to be feminism's first backlash, because that's not the way you actually, as a woman, take power and speak for yourself, right? You don't do it through lynch mobs. You do it on your own.
Because I heard there's
But I told you when that happens, they're going to go after every Tantra guru they can get their hands on.
Which they are. They're just systematically going through that.
That's exactly what they've done since. So people who made a career out of being front figures in the Me Too movement eventually became these new sort of moral crusaders who basically go after anything dealing with sexuality.
Right.
So you even became, dare I say, victim. You're proud. You were a victim in the sense that you're a victim when you get hit by a car, right? Somebody decided to go after you, or a couple of people coincided in the way that they went after you. And I felt terrible that folks could publish that piece. I thought it was crap journalism of the worst kind. There wasn't any fact-checking going on, anything like that. I just saw the sensationalism in it, the newspapers they wanted to sell, and nothing else. So I should say that, and I mean that to folks. I think it's a shame they published that piece, and it means they killed the credibility in my eyes. But for you,
a lot of people felt that as well. I was surprised how many people had that view. It's like, oh, okay, maybe the tide is turning a little bit. People are a little
well,
bit.
You did speak up.
Yes. Yeah.
Honor to you for doing that, because one of the funniest things, strategically speaking, if you're a cynical strategist, and I'm also a strategist in the military, as you probably can tell. So, lynch mobs in the past at least killed their victims, and they went after somebody to kill them, but they don't kill people any longer. It's like they think they can just kill their reputation and somehow that will work. The funny thing is that people like you and me, if we get attacked, we're around. We can still write and we can still express ourselves, but you were very, very reluctant to speak out in public.
Yes.
You're a teacher, and the TNT family means tons to you, and you've fostered them now to take over and run the show so you can be a specialist in what you're good at and have a good life and all that, and we can hang out together and date each other.
Free time, yes.
Like we love to. But we were really looking forward to that, and suddenly these pieces are there. So number one, how did you react, besides what you already told us yourself brilliantly in front of the camera and defended your integrity, right? But beyond that, what do you think is really going on in society now when anybody out there is a Tantra teacher, no matter how needy they are also being persecuted in this way?
Yeah, it's not only Tantra teachers, there's a lot of spiritual teachers, a lot of where there is some kind of hierarchy, or especially if there's a man off at the top, they're attacked, and it seems to be quite systematic. It's almost like, wow, who hasn't been attacked lately? And I think the more that happens, the less credibility. I mean, is everyone completely wrong? Are we all like dark forces and all this sort of stuff? It's like it becomes very uncredible in that. So, I was very reluctant to speak in the past. I mean, it's part of the, being a public...
And I understand that, right?
Being a public person, you always get flack. I always say to people, if you don't have a hate group, you're just not popular. You're not famous enough yet. The Kardashians or whoever it is, everyone who seems to stick their head out and be a little bit famous seems to get their head chopped off. And I think it's becoming more and more prevalent, and the danger with social media is that slander. The legal system relies on preponderance of evidence. You have to have some evidence to make claims against people. Now, if someone doesn't like someone else, they can just say whatever they like, print it on the internet, and a certain number of people just believe it because it's on the internet, or use that to justify their kind of prejudice against a person, and just say, oh, but I've read that you're a bad person, and that without actually having a fact checking.
Sometimes they don't even believe it themselves, but they just want to attack it anyway, because they're so bitter at life or whatever, that they want to go after people. So they believe it a bit in private, they don't believe it, but because it's published somewhere, they still use it as some kind of a weapon and attack you. That's how distorted things are.
Yeah, so when the first round, we had a few disgruntled employees. We went from this hierarchical model, and there's we're at the startup, and we were a very disruptive startup, very kind of controversial. And there I am at the kind of top of the pyramid, but having a hierarchy is inherently a little bit dangerous, because you can have things like the group think, you can have the sort of power and things. So I kind of saw the problems with that, so I was like, okay, let's go to a flat structure.
Alexis saw it if Alex didn't.
Right, exactly. Let's go to a flat structure. Let's get a network of talented people that can fluidly move into these different positions. Someone can lead a domination workshop, someone can lead the women's group, someone lead a men's group. There are different roles for those people. And we had some ex-employees that wanted to keep that hierarchy and stay at the top, and the technology of the new Tantra is very valuable. We still have sold out workshops even after 9 years.
Well, I told you that you won't have a problem selling tickets, but if you don't go out in public and defend your integrity, you're going to spend half the TNT courses trying to explain what you're doing. So by defending your integrity, that's settled.
Right. So
we don't even have to talk about it today, which is great. So we can move into other topics, and that's why you did a great job at defending your integrity.
And that's why, because it moved from just some disgruntled employees who started their own schools and basically tried libeling us and printing stuff to try and get more business, it moved to a newspaper picked up those sources as if they were fact-checked and real, and then started anonymously quoting people who we knew who they were, luckily, and we could give them a lot. But the thing is, we gave them so much information on this this, and they hardly changed anything in those articles.
I couldn't care less.
No, it was kind of like, what? And to be on the inside of it.
They were doing the Me Too lynch mob in Holland too.
Right.
That was like a selling thing for that newspaper. They didn't get, at least not court cases yet, that really they had to pay for what they published back then. And now they're going after people like you. I mean, one day this has to stop. And I think we need to expose the fact that this is not journalism.
Right. But it's so interesting to be on the inside of that and kind of know it and seeing it happening. It's like, wow. I mean, how do people justify that level of hate and think it's kind of spiritual? I mean, there's so much competition, you know, and judgment between different spiritual schools. I mean, isn't that kind of a paradox in itself? You know, we're supposed to be spiritual, you know, unjudgmental, you know, trying to support each other.
Considering what we've talked about is that people who have a bad sex life are resentful against life in general.
Especially those that have a good sex life.
And they love the hate. So that's one of the problems we're encountering here, because we are working with sexuality. That's exactly what we become the targets.
Right.
So I would say there's a connection there. But if anybody would defend the old model of TNT and maybe still think it should be reconsidered sometimes, it would be me. And the reason for that is that, to me, there's an enormous difference between Sutra and Tantra, and in your approach as a student towards your teacher. And I'm kind of scared here. Even if you're doing the flat model now, you're probably going to be great because of it. I'm also involved with the Tantric Monastery in Holland, which is kind of a space where you and I meet and our work too, and TNT is central to that. So, but even if that's the case, the approach towards your teacher as a student is actually very, very important, because you have to ask yourself as a student, is your teacher a role model to you that you're going to imitate? So you try to be as close to your teacher as possible, because this is the way a child looks at a parent.
Right.
Okay. So children will look to grown-ups as we imitate them, we play around, and that's when we do the cross-dressing and all that, we're kids.
Right.
And so we could be men and women one day, right? Or anything in between, for that matter. But the problem is that if you ask yourself seriously as a student, do you really want to learn the most possible, then often what's called crazy wisdom comes to the forefront. And, you know, the worst teachers out there in terms of lifestyle, you know, the real knockabouts, the alcoholics and drug addicts or wherever they are, can very often be the best teachers.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not saying you're any of those things. I try not to be any of those things myself. But I think you and I, in a way, both as personalities, have to defend our right to also sometimes be crazy wisdom.
Right.
We are not here to be other people's role models.
Right.
We aren't. And if people in media today make an injunction that you're not allowed to teach anywhere in our society unless you're this perfect role model that can be fired at any time for doing anything that's politically incorrect.
Yes.
Okay, deplatformed, as it's called. If they demand, and that becomes a condition in our society, it'd be really, really, really dangerous territory.
Exactly.
Because to me, the best mentors I had, the best teachers I had in my life were often really crazy guys, right? Really crazy guys, you know, weirdos like mad, and had really mad lifestyles. And especially when I work with shamans in the jungle, my God, the best shamans out there weren't the really polite ones that had a family and kids. No, they were the real weirdos out there in the forest, but they taught me much more than anybody else did.
Right.
So I think it's important here to stress also the integrity of Tantra itself. We're not Sutra.
Right, exactly.
Can you understand what I mean? Maybe you're interested in the whole crazy wisdom aspect because you're being accused innocently of so many things that actually weren't true. Because you probably never desired to be crazy wisdom in any way, and maybe I do. I don't know where it's different here, but can you see the point in also defending the integrity of that way of teaching?
Yes, and that, you know, this word teacher is such a loaded word. You know, we consciously moved to use the word workshop facilitator because it's much less loaded. Exactly for this reason of, I always say to people, focus on the teachings, not on the teacher. Look at, you know, the value is in the teachings. Don't use me as a role model. I'm a shit role model. I mean, I'm flawed. You know, you wouldn't want to copy me. The teachings can be valuable, especially if they, you know, get proven over time and other people in the network can use them, and other, you know, schools or other organizations can find value in them. Good. But don't focus on the teacher and try to emulate the teacher. That's what we found, like, that's a big problem if you do that. It's you're kind of sticking your neck out, because, you know, none of us are perfect, especially not me. You know?
No, but even the Volkskrant piece had accusations about your private life, like if that had anything to do with the fact you're a teacher or facilitator, if you like to use that term, which is deeply unfair. I mean, it's just, and it also, I think the whole idea that we can demand perfection from other people is a ridiculously infantile idea.
Right.
An infantile fantasy, which is incredibly dangerous. And it's because it's been used that we can fire politicians over almost anything they do. So if a politician utters a single politically incorrect term, suddenly they can be fired the next day. And we don't realize that by doing that, we're firing the best politicians we could possibly have, and then we get the B team and the C team and the D team. And then we're wondering why our politicians are crap. Who else wants the job?
Right.
You know, we've shot everybody else by now.
Yeah.
Now, if that sort of disease, I would call it a disease, a pathology, if that pathology starts hitting even things like the TNT, for example, which you should be a grown-up if you join. You're reminded constantly when you join something like
adult
TNT.
responsibility.
You're adult, you take responsibility for yourself. When you sign these documents, make sure first that you take responsibility for yourself, because anybody who signs up with us has to do that. You're also being screened. So even if your judgment isn't good enough to judge whether you're an adult or not, we also will have a say on it.
Yeah.
Both you and I have to agree you're an adult before you even start with anything.
Correct, yes.
You've done that. You've gone through every procedure possible to make sure.
Well, I think we got in the beginning we didn't do that enough. We didn't screen enough, and that was one thing that gave problems. And I think a lot of the articles are referring back to old times. I think we got much better at that screening process.
You were a startup,
right? We were a startup, right? Yeah. It's like me kind of by myself at the start. A few people trying to work this stuff out myself, and yet I made mistakes. So not like what they're writing in Volkskrant. I mean, they just make things out of complete proportion. But innocent mistakes, trying to find the right way. How do you really help people, and what's the process to make people really clear on their boundaries? Because this word teacher, it is so loaded. Also, like from a kind of a primal way.
I like to reconquer it.
If you can educate people on that, great.
A real bulldozer.
But the problem is, it's also very, very deeply conditioned. Like I found that the people who would really kind of put me up on a pedestal, Alex is great, he's wonderful, he's perfect, I love him. So they're the people that turn one day, and because they don't get the love that they feel they wanted from you, they use that as justification, and they go complete hate and look at every situation, often where you're just trying to help them, that you were then trying to manipulate
so
it into something.
They ironically accuse you of being a guru the day you stop being a guru to them.
Right. Exactly.
It's ironic.
So, but it's because then you've got this whole, looking up to mummy and daddy, and all of a sudden now I'm a teenager, I'm going to rebel against mummy and daddy. It's quite a primal thing that seems to happen. So that's why I was kind of that's the main reason I retired. It's just like I'm so sick of this kind of projection thing. This is not cool. Let's put a whole bunch of other facilitators in place and have a network. It's much more sustainable. We've had hardly any complaints since then, and that's why I was getting a bit pissed off with Volkskrant when they're looking at us and going, it's old news. It's like they're looking at an old system where we had that hierarchy with its challenges, and they're still thinking, he's still behind the scenes pulling the strings. I mean, I just completely lost interest. They're like, please, can we have your advice on this? Really? Do you really want to ask me? I have very little idea what's going on in TNT. I hear they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this ritual, this workshop. I was like, wow, okay, sounds good, great.
That's sexy. It's like being in a rock band. The reputation is much better than what you actually do after the concerts.
Right. Yeah.
And it's true. But you talk about retiring, and I know what you mean, because what you dream about.
But let me clarify: retiring from facilitating workshops.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But what you do when you go into leadership role is that the first thing that strikes you is that you're being lifted into that role because you're probably older and know more than other people do around you, and that's exactly when you start facilitating, or you start leading things, or teach for that matter.
Yeah, but I always say in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I certainly don't think I have all the answers. I never had. I've always said I only believe 80% of what I say, because if I look back 5 years and I look at a video of myself saying something like, at least 20-30% is wrong. So it must still be the same right now. To doubt yourself, in the moment.
Maybe that is the wisdom element, isn't it? Exactly.
Maybe it is.
You take risks even during the teaching.
Yeah.
That's exactly why you're brilliant, because you're playing people's minds, and they can play with their own minds when you do it.
To ask that question, what if it's me that's off? That's a difficult question to ask when you're projecting on someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but when you do take on a leadership role, and you're usually lifted up in that position because you realize, okay, now I'm the guy who knows the most in the room, and that's why they look to me, right? The second that happens, the first thing you actually have in the back of your mind is that, how do I then remove myself from this position?
Yeah.
And that's what real leadership is.
Yes, yeah.
Like if you're a parent, you see the child in front of you. One day you're going to foster your child away from you. Actually, that whole process starts from day one when you're a parent. So one day this child is going to go away from you and become independent, be an autonomous human being. And then if you're lucky, that child can choose if they want to come back and be your friend.
Right.
That's my relationship with my parents. They're exactly like that. They foster me away from me. So I learned from them that this is what leadership is all about. This is what teaching is all about. It's like you start teaching, it's like you're at your best almost when it's almost dreaded to teach. It's like it's kind of something boring with it, but you just do it.
Yeah.
And that's when you're really brilliant.
That's
really
a lot of people that want to be teachers. They're a little bit scary. I mean,
oh yes,
you know, I fairly quickly burned out that lot wanting to be a teacher, and then I was kind of forced, like, no, keep teaching, burn through that, keep teaching. And it was good advice because, you know, then it seems to be cleaner than the people who really want to be, you know, the teacher and have all the students adulating them. That's
it's
dangerous.
It's like women who have two men in bed and hate the fact that there's a competitive edge between them, right? They want the man to be smoothlessly collaborative. It's the same thing with the teacher. There's something eerie and really bad about a teacher who stands there and loves standing there a bit too much and has a bit of narcissism about him or her, right? But instead the teacher goes up on the stage and says, I'm just doing my job. I've done this 1,000 times before, and I'm going to add a little sparkle to today for my own good, to be entertained by doing it. So just put a little surprise in there for myself, because I've done this before, and that's exactly what you like.
Yeah, then it's clear. It's more chance to be cleaner. Exactly.
These are the best teachers.
Yeah.
But they also already plan for their retirement in the sense that they plan to one day step down.
Right.
Meaning you start training some of your favorite students you pick out. They're students for the right reasons, they have the right talents, and you see power in them. You see that one day they can be the teachers and facilitators and they can take over. That must be exactly what you do with TNT, because I do double
yeah, but I would say that was my greatest mistake.
Yeah.
I'm paradoxically bad at seeing people's shadow side. I just think that, you know, I see the goodness in people, want to kind of believe in the goodness of people, and that was one of the mistakes I made, was kind of praising people a little bit too much, putting them up too fast, and not seeing that they might have ulterior motives in this. And I think I made some big mistakes at the start with that, of choosing the wrong people.
Again, it's a startup you run.
Right, exactly.
These
you can't
are
be
typical
perfect. Yeah.
mistakes that startup innovators do at the beginning of their careers. So you would now, in hindsight, actually look more carefully for people with the right motives, who really would be the really bright students who could be teachers.
Yes,
not necessarily the ones that wanted the job the most, but the ones that you could pick.
The most often the most reluctant ones.
Yes.
So you know, I always, you know, I used to be like, you know, it's inherent we should trust people, right? And then if they do something wrong, then you distrust them. Now I'm like, no, you have to earn my trust over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds kind of harsh, but to not do that is setting yourself up, you know, for a fall. That, you know, you have to really.
This is Alexa. It's a very, very matriarchal feminine strategy to understand you cannot trust people until they prove you can trust them.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
It is. That's what I like in women. That's what they should test you as a man. Because they don't buy your bullshit, they look at your behavior. Right. Yeah, you say that. You promise me this and that and whatever. And then you go off the date and the woman looks at you and says, if you do deliver on it, it would be different, wouldn't it? And I said, yeah, I don't mind that at all. And then they like you.
Right.
They like you, so now you look back at the woman and says, well, give me another 6 to 12 months to prove that I mean what I say. And I'm going to prove to you that I mean exactly what I say. I'm going to do exactly what I told you I would do. Then you can trust me. That's how you earn trust, right?
Yes.
So maybe this is why you're also interested in shifting from Alex to Alexa. There's a certain system you're after.
Yeah.
But I've got one thing about you.
Yes.
You're a really good Tantric xologist. Definitely one of the best I've ever met. And I met quite a few. Okay?
Thank you.
When it comes to men and women, one of the best. But when it comes to Alexa Vartman, I couldn't think of a better teacher, and I say teacher rather than facilitator, for women to, in a closed setup, be really able to fully develop their female sexuality. I couldn't think of a better person they could go up against, to be confronted with own bullshit or whatever, and to be liberated.
Thank you.
And I'm
Thank you.
really interested in that. I think that is the response we should take after Me Too and after what happened to you with Volkskamp, what's happened to so many Tantra gurus out there. I see a lot of female resentment and a lot of female confusion going on out there, especially when the people who actually read these articles and tend to believe them, right? And with you coming out of the Volkskraft experience stronger than ever with integrity, oh my God. You must be teaching in front of women in that sense. I mean, you must be thinking it already.
Well, you're reading my mind. You're reading my mind very well.
I mean, Alexa Vartman is not about you. Alexa Vartman is about so much more. It's about exploring the female mind from a person who's been a man for so many years and really understood fully what it
From a masculine perspective, internal, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yes.
So you're totally right. You read my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been playing with this idea for quite a while now and quite a few people, especially the women, because we don't have a women's group right now. And they've been asking me, like, can you lead a women's group? And I'm always like, just because I wear a dress doesn't make me a woman. I have a penis, I don't have a vagina, so it's very easy to shoot me down in that way. But also I feel like, there is, like I said, the shifting mind, the shifting perspective, me able to see with my own masculine mind, my own feminine mind and how it operates.
Yes.
And to explain also to women how to relate to men. Like we have the men's workshop is we relate to the destructive feminine patterns.
Yeah.
Right? To teach the women also how to relate to the destructive feminine patterns in men, because they also have a feminine side. And what do men actually look for for example, in a woman? What makes her so stable that she can really relax and never have to worry about jealousy? So I had a couple of points just off the top of my head, and these are really controversial because I'm kind of like, God, if I do that, a lot of women might hate me if I do that.
Well, they do hate the bitch. They do hate the matriarchy.
Right.
But they still love it.
I'm kind of like, do I really want to deal with that?
The tribes I've studied is an older woman. She's over 50. She just left the reproduction cycle, but she understands both men and women. That's exactly why she's positioned where she's at.
Right.
But she doesn't care what the younger women think of her because she's just focused on giving them what's best for them.
Right.
And finally they learn to trust her, and then they adore her.
Right.
Yeah. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. I see the sexual matriarchy, you definitely. But go on, please tell me what you're planning.
Well, here's just like two things off the top of my head, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, I ask a lot of women, and I always try and get the words out of their mouth. For example, I say to them, how much of your time in your relationship are you asking the question, does he love me? And a lot of women say, like, oh God, like 80% of the time I'm asking that question. Now that seems to have changed somewhere around the Second World War, and I'm not advocating going back to old times, but there are some useful things that used to happen that sometimes are not so functional in our modern society. Before the Second World War, women used to often ask, how can I love my husband more? Now, if a woman, as a man, if a woman was saying that to me, focusing on how can I love my man more? How can I support his life's purpose? He can also do that to her masculine life's purpose. It's not gender specific, it's masculine and feminine. How can if the feminine was going to my masculine, how can I love you more? How can I support you more? And her focus on that of actual like unconditional love and devotion in a healthy way, not putting the woman below and all that stuff. No, as two people together really loving and supporting her. That would, if a woman's doing that to me, it's like, wow. That's a good woman. That's a woman I could really stand by and be.
I've had a relationship like that for 22 years.
Right.
That's why I'm so damn happy. Exactly because of that.
Right. It's a huge thing, and it often doesn't happen outside. Another thing I often say to women, how much of the time are you spending thinking about your looks, your body, your personal appearance? And most women, ask your friends, most women seem to say about 75% of my free thinking time, I'm thinking about my looks. Am I overweight? Am I, this, that? Am I getting old? And so on. There's so much focus on that, right? So I often, say, okay, look, I try and do my makeup as best I can, and then I try and put that out of my mind, the obsession of, the feeling of what if I don't get what I want, to put that aside and focus more externally. Okay, how can I serve? I've done the best I can in my looks, and now I'm going to consciously as a practice try and forget that and look at, okay, what can I do more constructively than just self-referencing all the time?
It's incredibly sexy when you say it.
Right, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
But this was the key, because you just asked two very simple questions. What do you keep your mind busy with? And if you keep your mind busy with, does he love me, does he love me? Which is a very infantile question. It's just like the little girl asking, is it like, does he love me? But, a 14-year-old girl looks at a pop star on the stage or something. Right. That's where you expect that question. And you wouldn't really expect it in a relationship because constantly being asking yourself, does he love me, and then doing shit testing constantly to then also have an answer to that question.
Right.
Means you're going to fill up your relationship towards your man with all these shit testing questions,
right.
which is very tiring for a man.
Exactly.
But I picked you, I live with you, I hope you understand that I love you, but since you're constantly asking that question, and probably not believing me, you are then perceived as a girl with a bad self-confidence rather than a woman with a strong self-confidence.
Which is not very sexy.
No, it isn't.
And that's why I say, like,
suddenly as the man you perceive as the only grown up in the relationship.
Right. But I always want to stress, like, this is not criticism of women.
No.
Right? This is what are the potentials for the feminine to grow even in a bigger, more, because in Tantra, the feminine is it's adored. It's often equal or even higher than the masculine in terms of energy and fullness.
Yeah.
It's the beauty. I mean, a woman's body is beautiful. A man's body is kind of, it's so it's like, how do you honor women to move into even greater spaces, and with not criticizing them, but how can they live their full potential?
It's not that different when you do men's work, because in men's work you also end up with the difference between the boy and the man.
Right.
And the boy who tries to get into a relationship, he desires this woman as an object that he hopes to possess.
Right.
And then the next idea is, if it's an object, then it's something you're going to plunder milk for its worth, and then you're going to drop it. That's a terrible way of looking at the human being in a deep relationship. It's of course dysfunctional from day one.
Right.
And instead saying that, how can I be a man and then find the woman that I can serve?
Right. And then it comes back to that question.
That's a healthy manly relationship.
Exactly. And then it's like, what does it mean to be more masculine? So I was quite inspired by Jordan Peterson. I think Jordan.
Yes, it's great.
So I mean, he was saying, and it really inspired me, and that's also one thing that kind of pushed me to speak up. He said, one of his criticism as men is that they don't stand tall with their shoulders back and face the world. And he said, like, for men, don't be afraid of confrontation. And that really hit me, because I would much rather just ignore confrontation, let them say what they want, let them hate me, I don't really care. And it's like, no, that's just not right, because then they're going to do it to the next person, the next person, the next person. It's like, okay, Alex, get in your masculine, let your balls hang freely in the wind, and fight the good fight, speak up what feels unjust, because it's going to keep repeating itself.
Yeah.
So that also kind of inspired me as well to the masculine is also about being courageous.
Mm-hmm. But you, as Alexa, as a teacher to women, and to really explore the enormous power of female sexuality. Whoop.
Yeah, because I'm totally pro-feminine. I mean, I'm trying to embody the feminine. Like, we love the feminine.
Yeah. All my philosophy is about creating a society that has a strong patriarchy and a strong matriarchy,
right.
And look up to the elders for guidance and advice, but also go through the whole process of one day rebel against the older generation and then create your world.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just what I call the inner circuit of women and the outer circuit of the men, and the androgynous is important go-betweens between the two. That to me is fundamentally tribally how human beings operate.
Right.
That's why I go back 10,000 years in time to find out how we actually operate today. And we're only unfair to ourselves, and we're being very inhumane by not starting with actually finding out how we work.
Right.
What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? And how can you play with these roles? Also not trying to ignore them, because this whole blank slate ideology shit that's going on at the moment is going to be really, really terrible. To begin with, it's tons of nonsense, and we're also creating a pressure cooker of resentment, and I think that's exactly why you were attacked.
Right.
You were attacked simply because you are actually, in a radical new way, taking the best out of our past understanding of what it means to be a man and being a woman, and what sexuality is, and how important it is to us human beings. You never promise people an easy solution to anything. You promise them a long journey and a constant challenge.
Yes.
To do it with you, right? So you promise them all the right things, and you should be honored for that.
Thank you.
Rather than being persecuted by stupid Volkskrant. But they're dead and over. We will outlive them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Do you want to go on a date?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been waiting for you to ask me.